All right. Praise Yah. So, like I said, it was interesting. Brother Frank came to me during the week because he was going to prepare for other things, and he asked me if I would teach. And I never want to let him down, so I'll always say yes right away, even though I had no idea what I was going to teach. And then my wife and I were reading through the Torah portion, and she's like, there is a lot of good stuff in here. Why don't you teach the Torah portion? So I feel like I keep relying on the Torah portion, but there is good things in the Torah portions. And I always love to show how Yeshua is in the Torah portions because I believe that that's what the Torah is all about. I mean, Yeshua did say to the Pharisees, if you knew Moses, you would know me, for he spoke of me. So I love to show, when I see it very evidently, that he's all throughout the Torah portion. I like to show how. So I kind of combined a two-part message today because it was interesting. We were singing songs about the end times, and that's what I kind of wanted to teach because I believe what this Torah portion was showing you is going in to enter the land. So chapter 19 is actually a transition chapter. The first generation has died off in the wilderness, and the second generation is being raised up to go and take the promised land. And so shadow pictures in the Torah are very important. The promised land represents the kingdom to come. And so, I'd heard some teachings during the week also. I like to listen to other preachers and stuff. And there was one that kind of jumped out at me, and he said that the way that we believe is different from most professing believers, especially on end times. Because what are most professing believers believing is going to happen? Rapture, they're going to be taken to heaven. They're waiting to be taken off of this earth, and Yah wants to put a kingdom on the earth. We see it two different ways. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that. We have a different thought process. They're heaven-focused. They want to be taken out of here and brought to heaven, where we're kingdom-focused. And we know that Yah is bringing his kingdom on this earth. And so it got me to thinking about that, especially because that's what's going to go on in this Torah portion. They're getting ready to enter into the promised land, which represents our eternal inheritance. We're waiting to go to the promised land, are we not? Yes, exactly. And so it got me to thinking of a couple of things. First of all was Abraham. Abraham, according to Hebrews chapter 11, verses 8 through 10. Hebrews says this of Abraham: by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going, but by faith he dwelt in the land of promise as a foreign country. Because remember, Abraham had these promises that he was going to receive the land from the Nile River to the Euphrates River. That is a huge portion of land that we've yet to inherit it. Even Israel, when they were ruling and reigning here on earth, as in King David, they didn't have all that land. So Abraham never saw this promise, but by faith, he believed that Yah would give it to him. And so it was like a foreign country to him. He was dwelling in this place, and all these inhabitants are in the land. He didn't fully inherit it, but he was dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is Elohim. And that's what we're waiting on. We're not going anyplace. We're going to stay right here, and God is going to establish his kingdom here on the earth. This earth was made for man. Now it's going to be purified, and it's going to go through a process, but we're going to inherit this earth. And he's going to rule and reign on this earth. We're not getting whisked away to heaven. And how many times, as professing believers, we all once believed that. We all thought we were going to heaven. I don't know how many funerals I've ever been to, and it doesn't matter how bad the person was, all you ever hear is, well, he's in a better place now. They all think we're being taken to heaven the moment that we die, but yet the scriptures don't teach that. And so it's important to understand what our faith is based in, what we're waiting on, and how Yah is fulfilling these promises, because they've yet to be fulfilled. And I don't know about you, but I want to see his kingdom here on earth. I want to see Yeshua ruling and reigning on this earth when all will know who he is. Yeshua says this in John chapter 14. John chapter 14, verses 2 and 3. He said, in my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again, and I will receive you to myself, that there where I am, there you may also be. And where I go, you know, and the way you know. So he's coming again, and he's bringing the place that he's prepared for us down with him. We're going to see that. Revelation 21. It tells us about this place. Revelation 21, verse 2. It says this, and then I, John, saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Notice Yeshua said, I will come again and I'll receive you. I go to prepare a place for you, and this place is prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. It's the same wording. Yeshua has gone to prepare a place for us, and he's bringing it with him when he comes again. Well, not exactly when he comes again. It actually is after the millennial reign. But when he comes again, we're going to rule and reign on the earth with him for 1,000 years. And then this new Jerusalem comes down. And we're going to see that here as I continue on in Revelation chapter 2. Then I, John, saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of Elohim is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them and be their Elohim. And that's our hope. That's our heavenly hope. That's what the Bible actually teaches. Yet, that's not what we're hearing today. Everybody is preparing to be raptured off this earth. They don't want to go through tribulation. They don't want to go through any trials or testing. And little do they know that tribulation is actually needed. It's needed because it's testing us. We have to go through that time of testing. And, we read about that today. None of us like it. Jeremiah read Psalms 95, and it said about this generation that dies in the wilderness, they shall not enter my rest. Why? Because they were trying to seek it without faith. They were seeking it without faith. And so it's super important to have the faith of the correct faith. Your faith is placed in Yeshua, and he's going to get us to the promised land. He's going to get us to the promised land. And that's not what we're seeing today. People think that they're just going to be going there as soon as they die. And so I wanted to read a couple of things in Matthew. I want to go to Matthew chapter 13. Because I believe these verses show us that we're not being whisked away. That's not our hope. Our hope is for the kingdom to be restored on the earth, not to be taken out of this place. So let's go to Matthew chapter 13, and we're going to pick it up in verse 24. We're going to read about the parable of the tares, the wheat and the tares. Another parable he put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and he went his way. And when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner came to him and said, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares? And he said to them, An enemy has done this. The servant said to him, Do you want us to go and gather them up? Notice it says what are they gathering? Yeah, but they're gathering tares first, aren't they? Not the wheat. There's a difference between the wheat and the tares. So they gather up them first, and yet Christians, most professing believers today, think they're going to be gathered and taken. That's not what this parable is saying. But he said, Lest you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them. Let them both grow together until the harvest. And at the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, First, gather together the tares. So I don't know about you, but I don't want to be gathered first. I'd rather be left behind and be gathered second and bind them in bundles to burn them. You still think you want to be taken? Because that's where you're going. You're going to be taken to be burned. And gather the wheat into my barn. So he gathers the wheat into his barn, and we just read about how he prepares a place for us. So I'm going to wait on Yah. I'd rather be left behind than taken. And so he's going to explain the parable of the tares. And so jump down to verse 36. Just so you know that I'm not teaching out of out of thin air. I actually agree with Yahuwah says. Verse 36. And then Yeshua sent a multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came to him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the tares of the field." And he said to them, "He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seeds are the kingdom of the sons of the kingdom. But the tares are the sons of the wicked one. The enemy who sowed them there is the devil, and the harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of this age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all the things that offend." So the people that offend are gathered first. And yet that's what most professing believers think is going to happen. They're going to be taken first. That's not how it works. And those who practice lawlessness, and that's another thing that we like to stress, is that we need to be obedient. And the faith that you place in Messiah, your obedience is the evidence of that faith. When I accept Messiah into my heart, I begin to learn to obey. I learn to walk in righteousness. There should be a difference. There should be a change that Yeshua does in a believer. And yet that's not what we're seeing by most professing believers. They just think they need to profess him and say that he's our Lord. And then they don't follow it by any kind of action. It's like, what does your Messiah do for you? Because my Messiah has changed me. And I don't know what your Messiah does for you if he's not changing you into righteous behavior. Because it says right here, those who practice lawlessness will be gathered together and burned. If you don't want to walk in obedience, then you're not going to make it. In order to get into that kingdom, we have to learn to walk in obedience. But it's not you who does it in your own strength. It's the Messiah that you've placed your faith in that does it in you. I hope we all get that. And he will cast them into the furnace of the fire, and there will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. And then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. So Messiah is basically saying what I just told you. The tares are gathered first. We don't want to be gathered first. We want to be in that second batch, not the first batch, because it's the wicked that are taken first. They're going to be judged. And to prove that further, let's go to Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24, I'm going to pick it up in verse 36. We're talking about the days of Noah. And when you compare these stories, the end times makes a lot more sense when you understand what happened in the days of Noah. So let's pick it up in verse 36, Matthew 24. But of the day and the hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but only my Father. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days of the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and they did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So who is taken? The unbelievers, just as the tares are taken first. It's the unbelievers that were taken away by the floodwaters. Noah was safe in the boat. He was spared from the judgment. So we don't want to be taken. We want to be left behind. But that the world sees it opposite. So we do believe different. And it's what sets us apart. And you know, it's very easy to get discouraged. We all experience it, every single one of us. But we have to stay strong until the end. Because just as Abraham was looking for a city whose foundations and builder and maker was Elohim, that should be what we are waiting on. Not for pleasures on this earth. We're waiting on the world to come. And so continuing on, it's the floodwaters that took them away. So also will be the coming of the Son of Man be. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken, and the other one left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken, and the other one left. Watch therefore, for you do not know the hour which Yahuwah is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore, you must also be ready. The Son of Man is coming in an hour you do not expect. So we see from these 2 stories that the taken ones are the wicked. They're the ones that are taken, and they're gathered first. The second group is those of us who stay faithful to the end. It's those who place their faith and trust in Messiah, and he gets us into the promised land. And so now with that backdrop, let's go back to the Torah portion, because there's some interesting things that happen in this Torah portion. So the Torah portion is in Chukat, and it's in Numbers chapter 19. And it's interesting that it starts out this way, because like I said, this is a transition chapter. Now, we all know what just happened to the first generation. For 40 years, they were wandering around in the wilderness. They're beginning to die off. We're getting into that 40th year when we're reading this. And it's interesting how this portion starts out. It starts out with the law of purification. And we're going to read through some of this. Verse 1, and now Yahuwah spoke to Moses and Aaron and said, this is the ordinance of the law which Yahuwah has commanded, saying, speak to the children of Israel that you bring a red heifer without blemish and with there is no defect. Now, of course, we know that represents Yeshua because he was without blemish and without defect. And it's interesting that it says this, on which a yoke has never come. So no yoke has ever been placed on this animal. It's burden-free. And what does Yeshua tell us? Take upon my yoke, for my burden is easy and it's light. My burden is, I don't put a heavy burden on you. So when we're talking about walking in the commandments, that's not a burdensome thing. It should be something we want to do because we love our master and we want to learn how to walk according to the way he walked. And he walked obedient under the commandments. He didn't break any of the commandments, and so he is our example. He led his life by example for us. And so we get this picture of this red heifer, and it says that it's without blemish, it's no defect, and which a yoke has never come upon him. You shall give it to Eleazar the priest, and he shall take it outside the camp, and it shall be slaughtered before him. And Eleazar the priest shall take some of its blood with its finger and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times directly in front of the tabernacle of meeting. 7 always represents completion. This red heifer is going to fulfill the completion of the purification. We're going to see that here in a minute. Then the heifer shall be burned in his sight. Its hide, its flesh, its blood, and its offal shall be burned. That means it's a whole burnt offering. Just as Yeshua was completely consumed, he died on the cross. He gave himself willingly for our behalf. He was a burnt offering, basically, a complete burnt offering. His whole body was put on that cross, and it was put in the grave. Okay, so then we see this. Then the heifer shall be burned in his sight. We just read that. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet and cast them into the midst of the fire, burning the heifer. Now, it's interesting that it says these 3 things. And to get some context on cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet, I want us to go back to Leviticus chapter 14, because we get an interesting story there. We get this ritual for the cleaning healed lepers. Now, when you're reading the story of the lepers, I want you to think deeper than just a person possessed with this disease called leprosy, because what the Bible compares a leper to is someone who is walking, living dead. Because his skin is rotting off, but yet he's still alive. He's basically decaying. He's a shadow picture of someone who's walking, living dead. And before you come to Messiah, that's what you are. You're a leper. You're walking around, but spiritually you're dead. You're dead. And so how does these lepers get cleansed? This is interesting. Verse 1, chapter 14. And so Yahuwah spoke to Moses, saying, this shall be the law of the leper for the day of his cleansing. It's interesting how he's cleansed. He shall be brought to the priest. Who's the priest? Yeshua himself. And the priest shall go out of the camp, and the priest shall examine him. And indeed, if the leper is healed in the leper, then the priest shall command to take for him who is to be cleansed 2 living and clean birds. So these 2 birds represent 1 bird. Think of this. The 2 living and clean birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop, the same things. It's purification ritual. And the priest shall command that the one of the birds be killed in an earthly vessel, over running water. As for the living bird, he shall take it, the cedar wood, the scarlet, and the hyssop. Dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed, because the two birds are actually one bird. It's showing a first and second coming there. One bird dies, that's Yeshua on the cross, and then the living bird is cleansed in the blood of the dead one. So it's representing how we're being cleansed. We're represented that. We're cleansed by the blood of the Lamb. The cedar wood representing the cross, the scarlet representing the blood. Interesting, isn't it? Interesting. This is the same exact thing that the purification of the heifer is doing. Same thing. Do you see how Yeshua is shadow pictured in the Torah portions? And this is why I love to teach how Yeshua is in the Torah portions. It's just that he's concealed. And that's why Yeshua said to the Pharisees, if you knew Moses, you would know me, for he speaks of me everywhere. And here we get a story of a red heifer, and you're thinking, what is that all about? But when you have eyes to see, it's about your Messiah. It's about your Messiah. Now, picking it back up where I left off, verse 6, and the priest shall take the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet, and cast them in the midst of the fire, burning the heifer. And the priest shall wash his clothes, he shall bathe in water, and afterward he shall come into the camp. The priest shall be unclean until evening, and the one who burns it shall wash his clothes in water, bathe in water, and shall be unclean until evening. Then the man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and store them outside of the camp in a clean place, and they shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel for the water of purification. So these ashes were kept for the water of purification. The water of purification cleanses a man. It is for, and listen to this, it shall be kept for the congregation for the water of purification. It is for the purifying from sin. The ashes of the whole burnt heifer, which represents Messiah, cleanses us from our sins. And they have to do this before they enter into the land. Are we starting to see the shadow pictures? It's very, very interesting how the Torah is laid out and why it's doing what it's doing. There's purpose for everything that's there. And so now we see that. And the one who gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. It shall be a statute forever. Listen to this, to the children of Israel and to the stranger who dwells among them, because there isn't two laws, one for Israel and one for the church now. And yet that's what we've been taught to believe. Most professing believers do believe that. And they get this teaching from the Schoenfeld Bible. I don't know how many people have known about the Schoenfeld Bible, but the Bible was written in the 1900s, and it had all this commentary, and it talked about dispensations of time. And this is why most people believe what they do today, because of this one Bible who had all this false commentary in there and put everything on this dispensation of time. Like God starts here and we end here. That's linear thinking, but the Bible doesn't work linear. It's Hebraic thinking. It's cyclical. Everything repeats. And that's why, just as this story is repeating, we're going to go through the same thing, because Hebraic thinking is cyclical. Everything that happened to the forefathers is going to happen again to us. It works in a cyclical pattern. When you begin to understand that, the Bible makes so much more sense, and things begin to you start to get it. Okay, so Israel represents the people of God by faith. They place their faith in the one true living God. And it's Him that brings salvation. And it's Him that gets you into the promised land. And it's Him the reason why you obey. It's all about Him. Verse 11, he who touches... Now, this is interesting too, because remember what's happening. This is a transition chapter. And you're getting ready for the second generation to come into the land. The first generation had to die off. Why? Because they didn't believe Yah. They were trying to get in their own strength. They didn't want to go through battles or struggles or trials. They wanted, why don't you just give us the land? And now there's giants there and they don't want to face the giants. So it's all a lack of trust. So the first generation has to die off. And so now the second generation is coming in. Think of all the people that are dying in the wilderness, and now you get all these rules about touching a dead body. Why? Because the second generation is the ones that's cleaning up all the corpses. So, verse 11, he who touches the dead body of anyone shall be unclean 7 days, and he shall purify himself with the water of what? the heifer that we just read about. And on the third day and on the seventh day, those two should jump right out at you. Right out at you, because the third, I told you many, many times, every time you see the number 3, it always represents the resurrection of Messiah. So we have on the third day and on the seventh day. What does the seventh day represent? Our millennial reign with him when he's going to bring us into the promised land. So we get this huge shadow picture of us getting ready to enter into the land, and it's all about Yeshua. Everywhere you turn, it's about Yeshua. But if he does not purify himself on the third day, meaning he doesn't accept his Messiah, he's rejected his Messiah, because your Messiah did raise on the third day, pointing to him, and on the seventh day, he will not be clean. Whoever touches the body of anyone who has died and does not purify himself defiles the tabernacle of Yah. And who is the tabernacle of Yah? Us. Us. We're cleansed by the blood of the Lamb, who purifies us on the third day, and we will rule and reign with him on the seventh day, when we go into the promised land, by the blood of our Messiah. Isn't this an awesome picture of your Messiah right here? And you just read it at face value, and you're reading about this cow dying, and you're like, what the heck is going on? Do you see how this is what I mean, how important it is to study the Torah? Once you start to study the Torah, you see your Messiah everywhere, and you get how you're redeemed, and you get how he's going to bring us into the land. It's all about him. He gets all the glory, all the praise, and all the honor, because this isn't anything we could do in our own strength. We rely 100% on our Messiah. Praise Yah. And then we get Moses' error at Kadesh. And this is kind of a big deal, so I wanted to touch on this. Chapter 20, we get this story of Miriam dying. Again, she represents the first generation. So Moses, Aaron, and Miriam have to die. They're of that first generation. And Jeremiah touched on it. It's a massive shadow picture. So yes, this story happens, and Moses destroys the shadow pictures, we're going to see, but it kind of needed to happen because of the shadow picture of getting into that promised land. So anyway, we get this. Then the children of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month of the 40th year. Because this is 40 years now, all the first generations dying off. In the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. And there was no water for the congregation, so they gathered together against Moses and Aaron. And the people contended with Moses and spoke, saying, If we had died when our brethren died before Yahuwah. So this complaint is a little bit different than the complaint of the first generation. So, and you're going to start to see that because this generation even acts a little different. We're going to see that too here in a minute. Why have you brought up the assembly of Yahuwah into this wilderness, that we and our animals should die there? And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? So they're speaking evil of the land. The first generation didn't really do that. They didn't trust in the promises of Yah. But this generation, his complaints are a little different. It is not a place of grains or figs or vines or pomegranates. They're complaining against the land. They're not saying, Yah can't bring us in. They're saying that the land is bad, is basically. So the complaint is a little different. Now, nor is there water to drink. Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly up to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and they fell on their faces, and the glory of Yahuwah appeared to them. Again, we see Moses and Aaron interceding for the people. They're rebelling. They don't want to take. They're complaining against the land itself. They're saying it's not a place of grains or figs, but they should know better, because what did their forefathers do? They gathered the pomegranates and the figs and the grapes. Remember the big old cluster that they brought? So they should know better, but yet we still have a group of complaining people, even though this is the second generation now. Then Yahuwah spoke to Moses, saying, Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together, and speak to the rock before their eyes. That's the commandment Moses disobeys. He was supposed to speak to the rock. And it shall yield its water, and thus you shall bring the water out from the rock. Why that? Because the rock represents Yeshua. And how many times is Yeshua going to be crucified? Once. He's already struck the rock the first time they complained. and he brought forth water. That's why he's told to speak to the rock this time, because Yeshua is not going to be stricken twice. He's only going to be stricken once. Verse 10, and Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly before the rock, and he said to them, hear now, you rebels, must we bring water out from you from this rock? And then Moses lifted up his hands, and he struck the rock twice, destroying a shadow picture. And because he disobeys, he's not allowed into the promised land. Moses lifted up his hand, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and their animals drank. And then Yahuwah spoke to Moses and Aaron and said, because you didn't believe me, I told you to speak, and you thought that you needed to strike it, you ain't getting into the land. You didn't hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel. Therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. So all because Moses destroys a shadow picture, he's not allowed into the promised land. And you think, wow, that's pretty harsh. But you got to understand, shadow pictures are super important. You'll miss your Messiah if you get the shadow pictures wrong. And Moses and Aaron represent a huge shadow picture because they represent the first covenant. They represent the law, don't they? The law was given to Moses and Aaron. Aaron was the high priest who was to teach the law to the people. They don't go into the promised land because the law doesn't get you into the promised land. It's interesting that who takes them into the promised land? Joshua. And his name is Yeshua. It's Yeshua in Hebrew. So it's our king priest, Yeshua the Messiah, who gets us into the promised land. Us obeying the law without him is an effort in futility. You cannot keep that law without your Messiah living and dwelling inside of you. If you do, you're trying to earn your righteousness through the law. But your righteousness doesn't come through the law. It comes through Yeshua, who does the law inside of you. He produces a change in the heart of a believer. It's all about Yeshua. He gets all the glory, all the credit, and all the honor for the changes he will do in each and every one of us. Praise Yah. So now we get the death of Aaron because, again, the priest has to die. This priest has to die. And that's in verse 22 of Numbers chapter 20. The children of Israel and the whole congregation journeyed from Kadesh and came out to Mount Hor, and Yahuwah spoke to Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor at the border of the land of Edom. Aaron shall be gathered unto his people, for he shall not enter the land which I have given the children of Israel, because you have rebelled against me at the word at the water of Meribah. So we see Aaron has to die too, because he represents the two witnesses who brought the law. But it's Yeshua who gets you into the promised land. It's also interesting too, the chapter right before, well, not the verses about Edom refusing to enter, to let Israel go through their land. Who is Edom? Esau, the children of Esau. It's very interesting how they wouldn't let them into the land. They come out against Israel, and they're still coming out against Israel. So we get that story. But I want you to see the difference in this second generation. Go to chapter 21. It says this, chapter 21, verse 1. The king of Arad, the Canaanite, who dwelt in the south, heard that Israel was coming on the road to Etharim. And he fought against Israel and took some of them prisoners. So listen to this, how this generation acts, though. So Israel made a vow to Yahuwah and said, if you will indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. Do you see the difference between this generation and that first generation? When they saw giants in the land, they were like, oh, can't do it. They put an evil report against the land. But this generation is like, oh, no. If you're with us, we can take the land. Let's go. Let's go. And Yahuwah listened to the voice of Israel and delivered the Canaanites and utterly destroyed them and their cities. So I found that interesting, that this generation is different than the first generation. The first generation didn't want to go in and take the land. They didn't want the battle. And so we were almost talking about that today. We have to face our battles. Discouragement will come our way. It will come our way. We're in a fallen world. And this world is jacked up. We all know that. I mean, it is just messed up. People are doing all kinds of crazy things today that I never thought my eyes would even see. All because we're in a fallen state. And so we can't let this discouragement get to us. We have to overcome by the blood of the Lamb. Because he's going to get us into that promised land. And it's by placing our trust in him. We all have to place our trust in him. And we cannot let discourage defeat us, brothers and sisters. I know it will be frustrating. I know we're going to get discouraged because we know these truths and we're like, why can't you see it? But not all of us will see. The Bible does say narrow is the way, and there are few that find it. So I pray that our hearts would be willing to accept that we can't change the world as much as we want to try. There's going to be people that will hear and obey, and there's people that won't. And that's why Messiah gave us the parable of the seeds. Some fall on good ground, some don't. Some barely go into the earth. They don't get the strength. They don't water it. They don't get nurtured. And the enemy takes them away. And as sad as that is to hear, we have to stay strong and stay faithful to what we know to be true, even though sometimes we get discouraged. We fall on our faces. We don't want to get up. We'd rather go home and go to bed. We don't want to do it. But yet when we get Yah to use us, look what happened to Jeremiah's message. Weren't we all blessed by it? I know I was. All because he allowed Yah to use him, even though he didn't want to do it. But he got up here and he did it anyway. So I want to encourage all of you to let's do the same. We might get discouraged. We get down. It hurts to have family members reject you. It hurts. It's not easy. But Yah said, Yeshua himself said, in this life you will have trouble. But be strong and courageous. I have overcome the world, and I can do it in you if you just let me do it. That's the message I got today, and I pray this message blessed